Hi there, welcome to this build of a 1950s futuristic flying wing designed by Peter Fisher. Now we're building this from a great set of plans, and we got these from Derek Scott's website, and there's a link in the description below to access his website and hence these plans. Really reasonable price. Now in the last video we started to get this wing covered, and you can see we've got laminating film covering this now, and the next job before we start putting the tissue on top of this is to work on the windscreen. And just to say, the reason we put the laminating film on first is it gives a lot of strength and resilience to the tissue that we then put on, makes it much more durable. So anyway, as I said, before we can start putting the tissue on, I want to get the windscreen on, and then we can cover with the tissue right up to the edge of the windscreen, and I think it will look a lot neater than if we put the windscreen on last. So let's take a closer look at this. Now, on first inspection, the windscreen on this looks a fairly simple job. It's just two flat panels that bend round, or there's a crease down the middle. There's no curves, complicated curves, so hopefully, famous last words probably, it should be a fairly easy, simple process. And I'm going to be making the windscreen out of this this acetate, if I can get it without a glare. And this is, it says it's extra thick. It's 240 microns, and it's a kind of stuff that you use for book covers, that kind of spiral bound book covers. But before I dive in to using the acetate, I'm going to make up a cardboard template, and that should hopefully be a simple enough process. And I think we just want the acetate to come along, a sharp bend or crease, and then back to this way. And I think we'll have tabs that just fold here to go along the balsa here, an overlap of about 5mm maybe, and another tab along the top here to fold onto that flat top, and a couple of tabs here. So it's actually glued in place all around, so it's quite secure. And then those tabs, we will just bring the tissue right up over the top of that to hide it. So it should look kind of fairly sort of seamless and integral. That's the idea. So what I'm going to do is start to cut this card and make up this template, and we're not going to touch the acetate until we've got a template that we're happy with. Right, well, I've started to make up my template here, and essentially I've got a piece of card that's wide enough to stretch from the very front of the windscreen to the very rear corners back here. So that's deep enough that way. I've drawn a line across here which represents the distance from here to the front of the windscreen, and then I've drawn on this triangular section and added a little bit on for folds to come on the flat top here. The width of this I just took from measuring the width of the fuselage. So hopefully now if we cut that out, that front section should fit this, and then we're just left with dealing with how to cut out this top piece here. So I'll get on and do that now, and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, so I've got that cut out. I've bent up these tabs for sticking it down, and now that hopefully will just glue onto there. It looks like it might need to be a little bit longer. In fact, yeah, not quite the right angle, I don't think, but I'm going to stick with it, and I'm going to do these sides next, and then we can see why it's not a perfect fit, and we can make another one and modify it to get it right in the end. So we'll stick with this one at the moment. This is why we do this in card and not waste the acetate. And then when we find these need to be a bit bigger, we just stick a little bit of card on and make it bigger until we've got our final template. So I'll get on with this now and come up with a final. Right, I've got my first screen finished, and it's clearly not good enough. The side here is fine, the top is fine, it's on the bar down the front. This is okay there, but it comes in too narrow, so I've put a line there where the screen ought to come out to, and the other side I just cut too short, but this side seems to be okay. The top on this side is okay, it's just this side. So what I'm going to do now is use the information I've got from doing this one and hopefully make a better one. And again, this is why we're doing it in card rather than wasting acetate. And it's so much easier to work with card as well. Right, well, I've made a couple of profiles or templates since that last bit of film. I did this one and could see I need a little bit more on this side. So we've now arrived at this, which actually I'm quite happy with. It's got enough to glue it there. I need perhaps slightly bigger tabs on the front, although to be honest they're probably fine. The only thing I would say about this is that on this side, if I turn it round, there's probably just a little bit needed there, just a very small amount. But that seems to fit on okay. So I'm going to try making one of these now in acetate, and we'll see how that goes. I could end up having to make a couple more in acetate, or a couple in acetate, to get it just right. But we're getting there, which is a good start. So we'll see how we get on. Right, well, I'm part way there in making this canopy. I'm a little bit disappointed I can't get this crease in here without putting a line down it, and that is going to show up. I don't know what to do. I've tried several bits of acetate, and you put any kind of bend in it and it just puts a line, and I don't think heating it up would help. So I think I'm going to have to live with that. Now, to get the overall shape of this, I just drew round this with a Sharpie and then cut it out, or a marker pen. And now I've got these bottom flanges done. I've marked where the point is here on the apex of the roof, and if I just turn that, I see there's a bit of glare on the camera. There we go. And now I've just put lines where these bends need to go, just to help getting this right first time. And then we can get some alcohol on that, and all that, those lines that we've drawn on, even though my pen says permanent, it will soon come off. So I'll get that bent up now and we'll see how it looks. And it's just worth noting that to get a nice crisp bend on these, I'm just lining this ruler up with the marks, and then I'm just bending it around the edge of the ruler, and that gives me that nice crisp bend that I'm looking for. Right, I've now got my finished canopy, and I've got all the marks off from the pen using 95% alcohol, and this fits on really well. I'm really pleased with it. The only thing that I'm not 100% happy with is the line down the front, but if you've got any suggestions on that, but I don't know really how we could do that different. I've tried bending it several times in several different ways, and I always get that stress line. So anyway, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm going to be using this canopy glue, this Formula 560, which I've used a lot in the past. I really like it, works lovely. The only thing I'd say is I think it's got a different label now. I think it's probably made by Zap. I'm not totally sure. Now I'm going to be gluing that on, I'm going to be putting the glue on all of these flanges, and I'm going to be sticking that in place. And I think I've just got a clamp here, and I think I'm probably going to just clamp it in place. So I will hold it in, get it right, and then just very gently put a clamp on it. And I will probably put a weight on the top here. That's not right, I know. Put a weight on the top and maybe something here just to hold that down. The more I can hold it in place so that we get good contact where it's sticking to the balsa, the better. The better it's going to look. So what I would say is I've already treated this fuselage, the whole of it, with a water-based polyurethane that I use that's diesel proof, and primarily I did that because I wanted to make this waterproof for when I stick the tissue on, but I think it will help the canopy glue stick as well. So I'm going to get this, I'm going to have a look at this and a play about with how I can get the canopy clamped on, and then once it's all glued and set, we'll have a look and see what it looks like. Well, you can see I've just done a dry run and got this clamped up. I've got some cloths on the wing. I'm just concerned one of these clamps falls off and puts a hole in the laminating film, which wouldn't be good. Now the clamps are holding this, you know, these tabs nicely on the fuselage. I will put another small one here, and I will put another bigger one there to mimic that side, the same as that. And I think this is fine. I mean, it's a fine line of crushing the fuselage and having this just held enough, but these are small, easily adjustable clamps, so we should be okay. So I think there's just a little bit of an overhang here which I'm going to trim off first, and then we will get this glued on, and then I'll leave it 24 hours before I take the clamps off and see what it looks like. We're going to have ridges here where these tabs are. There's nothing we can do about that, because at the end of the day the tissue is going to cover right up to the edge, and we want to make sure that we have a good overlap, because we want to make sure it's fuel proof, and we don't want fuel oil essentially seeping in under the canopy. So I'll get this glued up now, and then we'll have a look when it's dried. Just one final thought before I glue this on. I'm going to be putting the glue on with a paintbrush, and I think less is definitely more. I often get it just over the edge, and I'm not particularly happy with it. So the less we can put on, the better, just where we need it, because it is going to squeeze out once we do that. We don't want it coming up the windscreen if we can help it. And the other thing I would say is we need to go around, make sure all these tabs are just pointing down slightly. We don't want them pointing up slightly, so that when this is clamped on, pushed down, all the edges are flat down. We don't want anything pointing up and going to upset our tissue. So anyway, I'll get this glued now. Okay, well, that's on now, and that got a little bit stressful. I've got clamps holding the sides, I've got these clamps holding the front, and I've put on a little bit of wood there on top of plastic so it doesn't stick, just to try and hold that whole tab down. And you can see there's two beach bearers, one either side of the fuselage, well, one under the wing and one on the top, just holding down this top section. So hopefully that will all now stay flat, and I've got some magic tape just pulling it back. It's yeah, well, we'll see what we'll see what it looks like when all this lot comes up, but hopefully it'll be all right. Right, well, I've just got all of the clamps off, and I was a little bit nervous as to what this was going to look like, but I'm really pleased with how it's stuck down, and hopefully you can see there how nice that is looking. It's stuck down really nice and evenly. And there's the one thing I would say is where the corner or the crease follows up this bar here, and just on the top where the fold is, there's just a little bit of a sharp edge where it's just been creased and pointed up. So I'll show you how I'll get rid of that. Right, well, here's perhaps a closer, better look, and it's just there, it just sticks up proud, and actually you can see my finger just catching on it. So I want to get rid of that. I don't think it would be a problem, to be honest, and we'd probably never notice it if we just decided to cover the model as it is. But I'd rather get rid of that, just that little sharp bit. Everything else is fine, it's all lovely. So just that bit. And what I'm going to do is I'll just zoom the camera out a little bit first. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm essentially going to heat up a screwdriver with my little blow lamp, and I love this blow lamp, and I did a review recently. There'll be a link in the description below this video to the review I did. Highly recommend these. But anyway, I'm going to use this blow lamp and a screwdriver. I'm just going to heat the screwdriver up, and then I'm just going to very carefully press that down, and that will just flatten that out. It'll just melt it very slightly. You can do this with any bits that you've got sticking up, but that's the only one that I'm concerned about. Now, we obviously don't want to get this too hot, but it needs to be hot enough just to melt that plastic a little bit. So that will probably do. And now we just need to very carefully, and this is fraught with danger, there we go. And I think, yes, that is so much better. It's still got a very slight high spot. There we go. Yes, that is so much better now. It's not catching on my finger, and it's not going to catch on the tissue when we start putting it on. So I think essentially we are now finished with our canopy, and we are ready to start covering. Well, I am really pleased, and if I'm honest, really quite relieved to get this canopy or this windscreen finished. I always find it a little bit fraught and tense, shall I say, actually trying to glue this on and getting it clamped and held in position. But this has come out lovely, and I am really pleased with the look of it. And it just finishes off that kind of futuristic Peter Fisher 1950s look. So I'm going to draw this video to a close now, and in the next video we are definitely going to be looking at getting this covered with tissue, and that will be really exciting because we're almost there now. One thing I might do, which I will do actually before that next video, is I'm just going to mix up some epoxy, 30mm epoxy with 95% alcohol, so it's just a little bit thinner than normal, and brush it around the engine bay and just over the edges here to make sure that's well fuel proofed and sealed around before we put the tissue on. But I hope you've enjoyed this video, I hope you found it useful and interesting, and please come back and see how we get on covering this lovely ion flying wing in a lovely Japanese Asuka tissue.